Elation, elation, elation. But what if I'm not elated? I can't lie, I am an elation skipper, but I'm also a free-to-play player, and one thing that free-to-play players love is free things, and since we got EMC for free, I'm not gonna let that go to waste. So I ended up trying out EMC for a lot of time on many different teams, and I just want to share with you what EMC without elation actually performs like and looks like. And spoiler alert, outside of elation, they're not great, but they're incredibly fun, like actually a really interesting character, and also a surprisingly good main DPS, but we're gonna cover all of that in this video. Feel free to use the timestamps to jump around the video, just because I'm a big yapper. So what does EMC even do without elation? Well, EMC in non-elation teams is kind of a sub-DPS support hybrid character in a similar vein to like Mozart or Much 8th or maybe even Jade. They do have a little bit of buffing, so you get some crit damage and a skill point from casting your ultimate, and you get vulnerability on the enemies from casting your elation skill. And because we're not playing elation teams, your carry gets a 50% action advance from the ultimate. And 50% action advance on an ultimate, it doesn't seem that good. But when you consider the fact that instead of having to rely on speed tuning for your action advance for a character like Sparkle, or charge for your action advance for a character like Mem, with EMC's ult you can dictate exactly when you action advance your carry. EMC's biggest issue as a unit by far is just the existence of RMC, because they provide crit damage and a ton more buffs in the form of true damage, which is just better than EMC. And it's kind of sad because if we got a kit from a 4-star character that was the same as EMC, people would see them more favourably in non-elation teams. And you might be thinking, is there literally anything in EMC's kit that would make them the preferred option over RMC in non-elation teams? And there are a few minor things, like the action advance thing, but the main thing that I want to talk about is EMC's exclusive effect, which might even make him a preferable option to someone like Sparkle. EMC's ultimate has the ability to cleanse all crowd control debuffs on an ally. And the first questions you probably have are, why is this a big deal? And doesn't Sunday have something like this? Or even some sustains like Ho-Ho? Well, there is a big difference. So on Sunday's skill, and surprisingly on all of the sustain cleanses as well, so on Ho-Ho's cleanse or on Lingsha's cleanse, they usually dispel one unspecified debuff. And the problem with this is that your allies can also receive more than one debuff. So when you use these abilities to cleanse one debuff, it might not necessarily cleanse your crowd control state. You might have experienced this before if you've been entangled and have a DOT and you get advanced by Sunday, but you're still entangled for some reason. RMC's ultimate isn't just a cleanse, it's a purge of crowd control. It removes all of the crowd control. And that's a really strong effect that we haven't yet seen, apart from as part of Silverwolf 99's global passive. Also keep in mind that it's only crowd control like Entangle and Prison, not like DOTs. But this specific effect is the main reason why I'd expect to see EMC in non-elation teams for people who aren't just playing for fun. Because it seems like we're moving into an enemy environment that's very heavy on crowd control. Like even in our current anomaly arbitration, the enemy crowd controls your allies. So if we have enemies that are starting to stack multiple forms of crowd control, using EMC's ultimate could ultimately save you a lot of cycles instead of being crowd controlled. And this is especially the case for Silver 99 skippers because you're not going to have the global passive. So I wanted to test out EMC as a non-elation sub-DPS just to see how well they performed outside of their preferred environment. And it was way more interesting than I was expecting, like way more insightful. And I ended up playing them with quite a few teams. I tried them with Welt, and mine is E5. I really want to get E6 because I want to do a Welt video, but it's basically what you expect with Welt. It wasn't great. It was like an alright buffer. I tried with Archer because you get the skill point refund, but the problem is if you're not skilling on EMC, you're losing out on potential energy, potential action advances. But it was also okay, a little bit slow but okay. But there was one non-elation carry who actually felt like they had decent synergy with EMC, and obviously it's the greediest DPS that you know, Mr. Ashveil himself. So Ashveil is a DPS who really isn't that fussy about his supports. This is mostly because he buffs himself so much in his own kit. Of course there's supports that buff him more and supports that buff him less, but Ashveil's more easily able to run supports that provide less buffs but more utility, mostly in the form of energy or frequent attacks. And lucky for us, EMC is a frequent attacker. And because EMC actually charges their ultimate quite frequently, you can choose to switch your Ashveil to attack boots, because you can rely on the action advance to reach your speed breakpoints. The other big thing that makes EMC pretty decent with Ashveil is that they have strong synergy with Tribbie. So Tribbie really favours AoE attackers in her kit, because both the additional damage from her ultimate and the energy that she gets from her passive scales on the amount of enemies that you hit. And EMC's damage is going to hit every single enemy. So in a team with Tribbie, EMC can act as a battery for her and give her more ultimates, which means more dance if you have that light code on her. So I managed to clear MOC 12-1 with Ashveil, EMC, Tribbie and DHPT in 2 cycles, and I think that's pretty good. To be fair, Ashveil is being shilled, but considering that EMC is not that good of a unit, it ends up being decent because of the synergy that they do have. And EMC actually does a decent amount of sub DPS in these teams because they're getting buffed by both Ashveil and Tribbie. Speaking of EMC's sub DPS, I think is genuinely the most interesting and cool and weird thing about their kit in non-elation teams. And this is mostly because the amount of damage that they deal directly scales with the enemy environment, which is so weird, but let me explain. I know elation is really confusing for a lot of people, so I'm just going to keep this bit as simple and as brief as possible. Elation characters use 2 new stats in their kit: punchlines, which is above your skill point icon, and certified bangers, which is below your character's icon. How to generate punchlines and bangers and what they're used for is specified in the character's kit. So in the case of EMC, the additional damage from their passive scales with bangers, and the damage that they deal on their elation skill scales with punchlines. The problem is EMC's whole kit is designed around generating bangers, and they don't generate that many punchlines. And because EMC's elation skill scales off of punchlines, it ends up doing less damage than it should, considering that it's the highest multipliers in their kit. But the thing that made me think that it was so interesting is that the enemies and environment actually give you punchlines too. If you look at the plain Arcadia like 4.x enemies, this one gives you punchlines, that one gives you punchline. Almost all of them literally give you punchlines for fulfilling some sort of condition. So if you end up in a heavy shield environment with a lot of 4.x enemies, you end up getting a decent amount of punchlines as a byproduct. And sometimes Hoyo gives it to you for free. Like in the current MOC, the buff gives you punchlines for attacking the enemies. So this means that the more shill that you have, the higher damage EMC will deal. And it's actually quite meaningful because elation scales logarithmically with punchlines. And what that means is the first few punchlines that you get matter more than the later punchlines. It has diminishing returns. So that on top of all the generic buffs that you could potentially get in a non-elation team means that in shill environments, EMC will be doing a pretty reasonable amount of sub DPS. So we might not have seen EMC's full potential yet. If we get a mega shill like Pollux level shill that gives you a crazy amount of punchlines for free, EMC could potentially be really good. Now for my favourite part. I want to talk about EMC as a main DPS. I think some people might get a little bit annoyed at me for saying this because these days everyone is a break DPS, but EMC is a break DPS and they're pretty strong, like not amazing, like not as good as the actual dedicated break DPS, but for non-break DPS they were actually putting out some heavy damage. And I've tested a lot of break teams with Dahlia because of the video that I made for her. And genuinely, in AoE, EMC is one of the best break DPS. And this is mostly because, for some reason, Hoya decided to give EMC's AoE skill double the toughness damage of Lingsha's AoE skill. Just to put that into perspective, Lingsha would need her E1 and Dahlia's weakness break efficiency just to reach the toughness damage that EMC gets at base. And EMC really suits being a break DPS for two main reasons. So first is their really high attack frequency and obviously their toughness damage. Because in these teams you can use EMC's ultimate on themselves and they'll use their elation skill, which is even more toughness damage. And the second reason is that his ultimate fulfills the conditions that allow you to use the Watchmaker set, which means he can run the Watchmaker set as a break main DPS and benefit the rest of the team in a scenario where you're not running a Harmony unit like Ruan that can give you that buff. Also, I lied, it is three main reasons. The third reason is that EMC deals hybrid damage in these teams, right? They deal mostly super break damage and a bit of elation damage. But as I stated earlier, that bit of elation damage can become quite substantial in scenarios where you're getting punchlines. And in these teams, you're getting debuffs like Defensive Shred and Res Pen, so your elation damage is actually pretty decent as well. Yeah, this team, I had a lot of fun with it. I genuinely think that in the right scenario, it could clear Anomaly Arbitration. I managed to clear MOC 12 with 3 cycles, Pure Fiction with 32k, and Apocalyptic Shadow with around 3600. And obviously these aren't outstanding results. This is not a crazy team that's gonna save your account or anything like that. But it is a quite useful team. Like in a scenario where you have a lot of elation shill, but you didn't pull any elation characters and some AoE, then this team might be one of your better options. I'd encourage you to try it out. To be fair, I do have a bit of investment. Some of the showcases have Dahlia E0, some of them are E1 because I got the E1 halfway through recording, but congrats to me. So your results may vary. I have a little bit of investment here. For your builds in non-elation teams, you really don't want to use the elation sets, the ones that buff elation damage, either for EMC or for the team as a whole, because the teams aren't dealing that much elation damage. But there's still quite a few relic sets you can go for as a support, namely Sacrados, the Eagle set, and Messenger set as well. But you have to keep in mind that on the Sacrados set you can only get 1 stack. And for your planers you can use literally any support planer, so that's Lushaka, Broken Kill, or even the new City of Convergent Stars planer. And for the Ashveil team specifically, you can use the Penacony set, so the Penacony Nano Dream set, because both EMC and Ashveil share the same element, and it also increases the damage of Dan Hung's Dragon because it does the same type of damage as Ashveil. And when you play as a main DPS, you're going to be playing in a break team, so you only really have 3 real sets actually. You have the Iron Cavalry set, which is your best set for pure damage. You have the Eagle set, which is actually really good for just having more turns to do more toughness damage. And then you also have my personal preference, which I spoke about earlier, which is the Watchmaker set, because if no one else is running it on your team, you get a lot of value from that break effect. And for your planar set, you're just going to run the Kalpagni set, gives you speed, gives you break effect, perfect for his break damage team. So just to wrap things up, can you use EMC out of elation? Kind of. It's not great, but it is usable in certain scenarios. And I think that as time goes on and the meta evolves more into the elation meta, we're going to see some more uses for this EMC character outside of elation. So even though they're not great, maybe there is some space in the meta for a sub DPS action advancer with a really strong cleanse that can actually interact with the elation mechanics. I hope you enjoyed learning all this information that I gathered from my EMC side quests, and most of all, I hope that you actually give them a shot. Try EMC in a team that's not elation and see if it's good on your account. Maybe it will surprise you. and maybe it'll help you when you need it the most. Like, there might be some crazy elation shill where you might feel the need to pull an elation character, but using EMC instead might just save you. So thanks for watching, keep elating all over the place. Don't forget to subscribe, and bye.